morning and a very, very warm welcome to the 18th Annual Trialogue Business in Society Conference.
So we're gathering at a time of great global uncertainty. Conflict is escalating, climate commitments are wavering, and economic pressures are mounting. ESG and DEI are under scrutiny, and traditional development aid is diminishing, and many say dying. So how should business and civil society be responding to the situation that we find ourselves in? The world demands more than business as usual.
I'm talking about societal fracture, and I'm saying that the biggest risk that we have as a country is that 2 out of 3 young people are unemployed. 65% youth unemployment in terms of the expanded definition. 42% unemployment. You've got more people that are unemployed than those that are employed in all the provinces except Gauteng and the Western Cape. 60% poverty levels, the most unequal society in the world. We are asking for trouble. It cannot be. If there is the great intervention that we actually need to look at as a country, is precisely that one. I have no doubt that that is the greatest fracture that we have as a country. It is our most profound schism that we need to address.
My speech isn't about despair. It's about disruption. Disrupting the status quo of working in silos, disrupting the myth that any one sector is able to take us out of this crisis.
So for us, the key ingredient that we've noticed since inception in terms of having a corporate such as Sanlam and others that lead initiatives is, first of all, it's beyond compliance. They need to have a clear strategic intent where youth employment is priority. So it's not transactional. As Rayanne mentioned, it is very much a deliberate partnership model. We meet every 2 weeks on a steerco in terms of how are we investing in our youth, where do we need to focus on, where do we need to give more attention, and so you need to have a very invested corporate partner that is going to lead a flagship sector initiative, because there is a lot of investment, both from a time, financial, planning that goes into making that a success.
Yeah.
So, and we found a lot of corporates that are leading sector initiatives, because one thing that I do believe has changed significantly is that youth employment and youth unemployment is a crisis in this country. And if corporate SA doesn't get around this and doesn't give it the attention it needs, I think we can all agree that it is a ticking time bomb.
Cheers. If you are sitting here today, it's a challenge to all of us. How do we really make sure that those children who are outside of this access net have access in just 5 years' time to come? So the role of private sector and the role of actually all other sectors that are non-state sector is to really join hands. And I kind of liked what Connie spoke about, because she was speaking about deliberateness when it comes to partnering. How do we become deliberate in partnerships? And how do we understand that when we are partnering, it's indeed perhaps very tempting to think about partnering along short-term goals. We can achieve this, we can tick it off, we can present it to our board, and we can really look good. But there is a lot of work, which is deep work, that has to happen around systems change.
I think businesses plan long-term for their own sustainability. And so when we come to the development space, it does not change.
Yeah.
And so when we engage with our boards and when we want to have things that are reflected in our annual reports, it doesn't have to be the freshest thing that we are doing, but we need to adopt this consistency that says we've got these long-term plans that say, and this is why data is so important, understanding where we are, where are we moving from, and therefore what is the trajectory that we need to assume to get us to a point where we need to be. Set targets so that you can be able to measure your progress as you move along that trajectory.
We are excited that a lot of you are adjusting your programs to be able to be entrepreneurial, which means it is no longer going to be a swear word when you say to somebody, I'm doing entrepreneurship development. But here's the power of it all. This is a developmental agenda. We've always looked at entrepreneurship more from the economical side, not so much from the developmental side. That is why every time we have a conversation about entrepreneurship, somebody tells you about the challenges.
Yeah.
Nobody tells you that what does it take to train an entrepreneur? Because entrepreneurship is trainable. What are the skill sets? What are the framings? What are the enabling platforms that need to be created? So the biggest learning is it's an ecosystem, but you must create enough noise, enough conversations so that more people jump onto the bus, repurpose their funding and say, we want to train entrepreneurs.
The children of this country don't need you to drive social impact. We need you to drive economic transformation as a matter of urgency. We need you to finally allow the sun to rise on these sunset clauses that have darkened our democracy and compromised our future. But I stand before you holding not freedom that was promised, but a ledger accounting for all the times you have sold my future to the highest bidder. Should be motivation enough for you all to reconsider what you think your true social responsibility is.
For the challenge in the industry, it's not potential. Potential from our students is overflowing, and it's not interest.
Yeah.
These guys are hungry. They're hungry for knowledge. They're hungry to grow. The first thing that we find is a challenge is that bridge between training and transitioning to employment.
We have a social responsibility, and I'm not talking about CSI, right? But we need to invest in our people, and more specifically, artificial intelligence. And why am I saying this? We are not going to compete. I mean, already now we're in the back foot. So if I were to say, we need to be intentional about upskilling, and we need to choose the right skills. So it can't be that we are still teaching people computer literacy.
After COVID, we've reverted to sitting back and doing work business as usual. We are operating, and I think this is for NGOs and for the philanthropy sector, the CSR sector, we are operating in a model, a 1980s model, in terms of how NGOs are structured, the way we're doing our work, the way we write grants. It's a 1980s model. We're in the 21st century. The world has shifted fundamentally, and we're writing individual grants for 2 years with a spend down model, spend all the money, show me a nil balance, don't save, don't invest, don't build reserves, deliver on the project. We're still focusing on projects versus sustainability of a sector and investing in a sector.
As a high-performance organization, the first instinct when you don't get the results that you desired, you feel like you have failed.
Yes.
But one thing that monitoring and evaluation has done for us is to be able to accept that things will not always go according to plan. And I like what is said there to say it is not failure. There will always be weaknesses. And where there are weaknesses, you must actually see that as an opportunity to make sure that you do the right thing.
When we look at scale, we also need to look at how do we design the different interventions based on the barriers that young people are experiencing, not just on the solutions that we might think that they need. You know, at Harambee, we often say we stay in love with the problem.
And as somebody who is passionate about diversity and inclusion, we, as the Telkom Foundation, are currently updating our strategy to make sure that we have a wider reach that includes young people who are coming from the disabled community.
I think it's really difficult to talk about partnership, and particularly funding partnerships in isolation from talking about umjolo. And umjolo means relationships. Because the essence, I think, of it is that people partner before organizations can collaborate. we need to actually focus a lot more energy on talking about interpersonal competencies before we start talking about whether or not organizations can collaborate. A lot of the partnerships that we've had have only been possible because two people with shared values that are interpersonal, also working in support of missions that are aligned and all that stuff, have been able to listen to one another, and listening with a keen and interested ear that actually is amplifying respect.
I think there's something we're not quite getting right, and we need to identify it and alter where recovered. And of course, I know, we always have the imperative of responding by saying it is government. But we're in this game together. This is our South Africa, and we have to find ways of working together to alter our country's condition. I believe, finally, that there are sufficient human, financial, and institutional resources present in this room to cause a radical alteration to our future. And I really ask you that you consider these possibilities, and I wish you well in all your endeavors. Thank you very much for listening to me.